Whether you're a casual gamer or a hardcore fan, you'll probably notice how significant sound effects are to the overall experience of a video game. But have you ever wondered how these sounds are made? In this video, we'll look behind the scenes of video game sound design and show you how sound designers create the sounds that bring games to life. I've been a gamer, card games, board games, and video games all my life. I was lucky that my parents owned a couple of arcade clubs when I was a kid, so you can imagine my after-school activities. Video games have a long history, but the turning point was in the 70s, when people could finally get home consoles, at least in the West, with Atari being one of the first. In the beginning, video game sound was severely restricted by the memory capabilities of the systems. Not only that, it had to be programmed, meaning the early sound designers were game programmers, nerds who were the only ones to know how to do it. It wasn't until later, with the introduction of CDs in the early 90s, that video games introduced high-quality sound effects and music. I still remember being mesmerized by the sounds and graphics of Crash Bandicoot and Porsche Challenge for PlayStation 1. The jump in technology and graphics also made video game sounds much more immersive by being positional in the 3D space. And that's the most significant difference between creating music for linear entertainment, like TV or movies, versus non-linear for games. In linear content, the sound follows the story, the editing, and the picture. In non-linear, the sound follows the user, the player. But let's back up and talk about how the sounds are made. As I mentioned before, at the start of video gaming, sounds were programmed on the computer because of the restraints of the system's memory. However, as the technology developed, the industry changed completely. What was reserved for nerds now resembles a vast Hollywood production, with the biggest game studios employing hundreds of people, producers, managers, and directors. Sound pros blur the lines and are used in games, TV, or movie productions, like Bear McCreary, who composed the Rings of Power TV series and games like God of War. So when it comes to actual sound recording or sound design, it's not that different from if you worked on a movie. You have your Foley, that sounds recorded in a studio that imitate other sounds, like breaking celery sticks to mimic crushing bones. Think of Mortal Kombat fights. These are no real punches. We have sound modulation and processing with effects, and of course, then sounds entirely created on the computer with the help of software like Krotos. However, that's where similarities end. If you think about it, a movie only lasts like 2 hours. Some games last hundreds of hours. When designing sounds for games, you need to think about repetition. How often will the sound repeat until it gets annoying? Believe it or not, footsteps are often one of the most important sounds in a game. Think of the different grounds the character walks. What about when it changes the armor or the boots? Do you think it wouldn't be annoying if all the footsteps in Dragon Age sounded the same? If you want total immersion when you're playing your video games, think of the thousands of decisions sound designers must make to create the immersion. How will the doors in a Hogwarts sound? What about Hogsmeade? Immersion is the big one here, and what separates linear production from non-linear. On most games, except some small mobile games that are still restricted with memory, the implementation is as important as the sound itself. Game engines like Unity or middleware like Wise or Fmod take all the sounds designers created and place them inside the game, where the correct sound is triggered depending on the player's actions. Not only that, various effects will affect that sound. For example, a gunshot in a cave will sound different than the same gunshot outside. Programming this into the game is as important as recording or creating the sounds in the first place. The process is much more collaborative than on other projects. For example, in a movie, a sound designer would work with a director and a producer, and that's about it. They don't have a say in how the film looks. In games, the audio designers will collaborate with programmers, designers, the composers to create an immersive world. Everything needs to work together to deliver an experience worthy of a player. Sound design is one of the most essential parts of creating a great game. Remember that a game has no silence. There is always some sound. The best make a game feel more realistic,
Second deck, on me.
atmospheric, emotionally engaging, creating a powerful emotional impact. The sound can create suspense and tension during critical moments, making us happy or sad or angry. Think of Arthur's last moments in Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, Dutch. He's a rat.
Or Aloy climbing the tall necks. These are memorable gaming experiences that we remember for years.
Wake the up, samurai. We have a city to burn.